Um, I'm Tommy. I go by the alias Dawgyg or the Dawgyg on Twitter. Um, I do bug bounties full time. I have been now for I think I'm coming up on my 3rd year of doing bug bounties full time. Um, my main program that I target is Verizon. I've hacked against a bunch of other targets aside from them, but I tend to spend most of my time on their programs. What else was I supposed to tell you?
I just realized I was on mute and no one heard what I said, but I heard you guys perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Go ahead, John. You are our next guest. Do us an intro and tell us who you are and what your hacker handle is and how long have you been doing bug bounties for?
Yeah, so my name is John Colston. We go by the handle of Mayonaise. It's actually a play on words. It's my own eyes.
Oh, sweet.
That's I thought that was fitting. I've been doing bug bounty about 1.5 years now, and like Tommy, my focus is Verizon Media.
What about you, Corbin?
We need to collab some soon.
Yeah, my name's Corbin. My hacker alias and HackerOne is CDL. On Twitter, I'm at hacker_. I think I've been doing bug bounties I heard about bug bounties. I think I signed up for HackerOne in like 2016, so about 4 years ago. But I started actually like actively getting into it more the last 2 years, I would say. So currently, I'm a computer science major at a college. And yeah, I do bug bounties in my free time when I can.
And for those of the viewers that don't know you guys, how did you guys get into hacking? I know, Tommy, your story is a little bit different than anybody else, so let's kick it off with you really quick.
I started hacking in the early mid 90s. Initially, when I got on a computer, I was on IRC, and I inadvertently joined a chat room, a private chat room. It didn't have a key or anything, but I inadvertently joined it. It was run by a guy named Lewis from San Jose, California, and he was a hacker, but he wasn't like stealing things. He liked to hack websites, or not websites, but systems at universities, and put egg drop bots on their servers to help him do IRC takeovers and stuff like that on the FNet network. And back then, we were all on extremely slow dial-ups. Like, this was before there was anything like DSL or cable modems and stuff. When we got 56K dial-up, that was blazing fast for us. Like, now we could download an MP3 in like 5 or 6 hours instead of like 2 or 3 days. But I joined his room by mistake. He had an egg drop bot running on one host in every single university in the United States. And that to me was just like the coolest thing in the world, you know, seeing somebody was able to break into a computer at each one of these universities, and they had super fast connections at universities back then. Like, and you wanted those for your bots and stuff. So I kept joining that room and bugging him, and he kept banning me. And eventually, he saw that I was going to keep pestering him until he at least said something to me. And he told me to go to I don't remember what the search engine was at the time. I want to say it was like Alta Vista or something like that.
Oof.
And he told me to read everything on there that I could about hacking and to tell him when I was done. And well, I guess he expected me to go and spend like a day or two reading stuff and then tell him I was done. But I didn't. I just kept reading everything I could find, and I would ask him questions. And eventually saw that I was actually willing to put in the effort and stuff. So he gave me my first Linux shell, and it ended up getting ripped from me. And I couldn't understand what that meant when someone said that I got ripped. I thought they actually like tore the shell or something. So I didn't know that it meant that somebody had stolen my shell and stuff. And yeah, he's the reason that I started hacking. I started out as a black hat or gray hat because I wasn't out to steal identities and stuff
Right.
like that. I hacked out of boredom, and I hacked corporations, governments, and militaries that should have had secure systems
Right.
and claimed that they had secure systems, but they didn't. And we defaced their websites. I went to federal prison here in the U.S. 3 separate times.
You were collecting
Um,
gold stars on Zone H, I assume.
Oh yeah, I've got Zone H still holds a lot of our
Yeah,
previous
yours.
defacements, both under my World of Hell hacking group, which is the group that I was co like leader of after I had joined, and that group is responsible for my activities as part of that group is responsible for most of my legal troubles that I
Very cool.
had as an adult for hacking and stuff.
Very cool.
Oh, and Core Project is also list some, and Hackwiser. I
Huh.
hacked up for both of those groups at various times as well.
What about you, John? How did you get into hacking outside of bug bounties? Maybe we'll talk about bug bounties in the next round of questions. But how did you get into hacking?
Completely opposite of Tommy. That's for sure. I was much more in the corporate route. I had worked ever since college in basically startup companies, and I had recently ventured over in starting up a company of my own. Just because of the operational situation, we needed to put some offices in place. There's going to be a pause. We're going to do so. I needed something to work on during that time. But there were different options. I could have gone down the route of doing some additional consulting, which I have done in the past. But in the summer leading up to signing up, I had watched several documentaries. I think there was one on Vice. There was a couple others.
The one with Mark Litchfield in it.
He could have been.
Mark Litchfield is not sponsored. He's like featured in a little show that they did for Vice about hackers and stuff like that.
I'll have to go back and watch, but I just had remembered that there was the talk about this whole new world or industry that was coming up where people are being paid to hack. And I'm always up for a challenge and to learn new things. And so I said, why not? And I had basically read several books leading up to me actually starting. And I was like, oh, this makes sense. You're just, trying to take something that is meant for a certain purpose and then circumvent it or change up how it operates. So it made sense to me from the beginning. And in December of 18 is when I started hacking, and hasn't really been a moment to turn back. Especially now with the coronavirus, we had just relaunched that business in January, and we had to set it back down again. So I'm back to full-time hacking again.
Wow, very cool that you're back to hacking again, but not cool for your business. Before I move on to Corbin, or we could do this, can I have everybody go on mute when you're not talking, just because I hear a lot of feedback? I appreciate it, just because I want to make sure that I can hear you guys clearly, but I want to make sure people watching from home could also hear you guys clearly. What about you, Corbin? How did you get started? How did you get started in hacking?
Yeah, so I was a freshman in high school, and at our school you're giving laptops as freshmen in high school, and there was like so there was like an admin account, and then there was like the student account, and the student account was like super locked down, and like we couldn't go on like gaming websites or couldn't go on YouTube or like any of those. It was like very locked down. We couldn't install anything, couldn't do anything that a freshman would want to do. So I figured out there was a way you could boot up the computer into like safe mode and like remove a file. There's like, it's like var db, like Apple setup done, and then like you can just literally reboot it, and once it reboots, it's set up as a new computer. So you just add an admin account, and then from there you can just do anything you want with your computer. And so I did that to a bunch of my friends' laptops, and eventually we got caught for it because it had some sort of like monitoring system. They saw all of a sudden like, oh, these kids are admins, and they're like playing games on like whatever websites and like going on YouTube, and they saw this like unregular traffic, and then I got busted for it and served
That's funny.
attention. And I didn't even know like it was hacking. Like, you hacked our computers. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't know what it was. And I got really
That's
interested.
really cool. Go ahead.
Yeah. So and then from there I was like, oh, hacking, like this is cool. And it was like, there's that adrenaline. And then I just started exploring like what hacking was, and started literally Googling everything that I possibly could, watching YouTube tutorials. This was before any of the HackerOne, BugCrowd, any like actual content was out there. It was all these like sketchy kind of tutorials on like someone's crappy Google site, or some like really like stupid like YouTube video with like the hacker music in the background. But yeah, eventually I started kind of going down not a very good route, doing some like activity that wasn't really good. My parents actually had called the FBI on me. I learned this. I learned this after I graduated high school, because my parents were so worried. Like, they didn't know what I was doing, but they just knew hacking was bad.
Rough.
But it was when I was like a junior in high school around then. So it was like my freshman and sophomore year, I started kind of like, oh, this is what hacking is, and like not really understanding like ethics about it. Then I heard about HackerOne, and that's when I kind of like, oh, like this is actually like something I can do full time and like get paid for. There's actually a career path. And
Okay.
so I was like, well, I've already kind of like learned some of these like attack stuff, so I guess I'll just try bug bounty. Like, I don't really know like what it is or like how it really works, but I'll just try it. So I just started attacking some of the DoD websites because they have bad VDP, and eventually it's just grown into like hacking mostly Verizon and other companies, the DoD as well, with their like challenges. That's basically how I got into hacking. Was just me wanting
Do you
to.
remember do you remember how you heard about bug bounties?
I honestly don't. I think it had to have been someone who was around back then who tweeted about a bounty they got. I'm not sure exactly who it was, but my guess is it had to be someone like Tommy, or I don't know if it was Tommy or not. It had to have been someone who was rolling back in like 2016, posting all their bounties. I don't know if it was him, Matthew, or someone, but I saw a tweet about like, oh, I got paid this much.
So it was just social media, or hearing about someone.
Yeah, it was
getting
probably
paid?
Twitter, I think.
Okay.
I was pretty active on Twitter back then.
What about you, Tommy? How did you hear about bug bounties? I know you and I've talked about it a little bit, but
Well, I actually signed up on HackerOne and BugCrowd. I want to say back in like 2014, like right when they were starting to come out. But I didn't do anything with the account. It honestly, at the time when I first signed up, it seemed too good to be true. Because of my past, if I ever get caught hacking again in an illegal manner, it's life in prison for me. So
nice.
back in 2014, seeing a company like HackerOne advertising saying hack these companies and get paid for it, it kind of seemed like there was a trick to it. Like, this couldn't be like legal, And so I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then in early 2016, like January or February 2016, I had been semi-active on Twitter because of following a bunch of anonymous pages and stuff like that for information about the Million Mask Marches and stuff that I was doing. And I ended up following some bug hunters, like you were one of them, Sean Melia, Mark Litchfield, Bug Bounty HQ, Franz Rosen, and a couple of other guys. And you guys started like writing blog posts about some of the stuff that you were finding and sharing it. And I saw those and seeing that you guys were actually getting paid for this. And it's like I didn't think all of you guys would be this open about it if it was illegal, because you were like using your real names and stuff and not like hiding behind aliases. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll give it a shot. So I went back to HackerOne, went to sign up, said you already have an account. So I was like, oh yeah, reset my password, logged in, and saw right off top that Yahoo had their bug bounty program on HackerOne. So I've been hacking Yahoo since 1997, 98, somewhere around there. So I figured that would be my best choice, like I know them pretty well. So let's see what I can find here. I ended up finding some like things that were closed as NA at first for the first little bit. But then in March of 2016, I found that Yahoo admins and just their architecture people in general were using GitHub Gist to share information back and forth with each other, like stack traces, even source code snippets, network topography, and stuff like that. And at times, things as sensitive as like database names and stuff that were outputted in like some Catalina startup log or something like that when they would have a problem. And they were forgetting to either make them private or delete them after they had done it. So while I was doing my recon on Google, the gist popped up with one of them, and I started just using Google Dorks in gist searches looking for Yahoo stuff, and ended up finding enough things that it would I felt it was going to be a bug. So I wrote up a little report, sent it over to Yahoo, and they were like, good job. This definitely shouldn't be out there. But I wasn't really confident that I was going to get a bounty just because it was a third party site where it was just they were sharing information and stuff, and it wasn't against them themselves. They ended up doing the best they could to fix it. Like, I mean, there's only so much they could do. They contacted each one of the people whose gist that specifically I had brought up, contacted them to get them to go pull the gist down or make it private or whatever. And after about 6 or 7 weeks of them doing their best to clean up that stuff, they closed it as resolved and gave me a $300 bounty. And at the time, $300 was quite a bit for me, especially for something I found on Google searches. So kind of like, I don't know, got addicted at that point.
That
I
was that was
started,
the moment you realized like there is something real here to spend time
yeah,
in, because I remember you were working as a IT
system
somewhere, system
admin.
admin.
I was a senior Unix system admin, and I was technically a junior Java developer for this for a company. Um, and at the time, it's the first IT job I had ever gotten, and they were the first company willing to take a risk on me, hiring me with my felony convictions for being a malicious hacker.
Right.
And I I had that job making an extremely low amount just because I was happy to be in the field, period. So when I saw that I could get $300 for something like that, I was like, okay, let me see what I can do and spend a little bit more time in this. So over the next like 6 weeks or so, I got a bug on Mapbox that they gave me $1,000 for. And then I started just finding some other bugs here and there that were a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, and it was adding up pretty fast. And
Yeah.
then I saw your blog post about Image Tragic on Yahoo,
Right.
and was like, you know what? I know a couple of places that use that same like use that stuff that people probably hadn't checked. So I went over and found it twice. And after that point, I was really absolutely hooked. And I started talking to you and Brett Ziot a lot, and we all
Right.
started hacking together.
Very cool, man. Thank you for the shout as well. What about you, John? How did it all happen?
Started when I was hacking VCRs back in the day.
Hey, there's finally somebody old like me.
I was able to record a episode of, or movie of Goonies by streaming two VCRs together. Yeah, so how'd it happen to me?
How did you hear about bug bounties, and how did you get hooked?
Yeah, so, well, I heard about it, like I mentioned earlier, through NPR, Vice, a couple other things that were out there. So signed up, started playing around. The first bug I found was ridiculous. It was a critical. That was my very first one that I found. And so whenever you're talking about a shot of dopamine, that was a shot of dopamine. And it was a real quick, wow, there's something big here. And the only reason why I was going after that particular target was something that I was familiar with, having worked with a business that interacted with Yahoo in a certain way. I'm not sure how close we can get to the details, so just kind of steering away with that from that. But so from basically some of my business dealings with Yahoo, I was able to know of a certain service that they performed, and that was the first thing that I looked at. And yeah, it was critical right off the bat, and it was no turning back from there for sure.
But how did you hear about the idea of bug bounties being a thing? Like, did you?
Yeah, it was straight from out of those. I think once I had heard about there being programs that actually provided payouts for this, I just basically Google searched and figured out that, and then realized that there were basically two companies that were providing it, and I signed up for both of them, and then just jumped in on HackerOne, simply because one of the books that I read, and this sounds cheesy, but it literally said in the book, if you are a beginning hacker, you should look at Yahoo. And that was the crux of me going and going after Verizon Media, was simply from that book.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah. And then from there, I've dabbled in other programs, but it's kind of try to be a master of one versus a jack of all trades. There is a risk and reward associated with that.
Right.
The risk is if Verizon goes away, then you got to start at square one. The reward is you become an expert, or a subject matter expert, as they used to call it in the industry, on certain things. And you're able to build an intuitive gut whenever you look at a target of, like, I've seen these types of issues in the past. More than likely, it's going to be in one of these 3 or 4 areas.
So I assume you're going after just patterns, right? Like, you're recognizing a pattern, you're becoming very good at it, and then going after every single one of those assets of some sort.
Exactly. So I'd be straightforward. I don't have the skill set of either Corbin or Dawgyg. So what I've done, being a analytics background, I collect as much data as I can, and I make sure that I save it, because I know that there are things that are contained in that data set that I don't have the eye to be able to spot yet, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to spot it in the future. And whenever I find a weakness, I go after that weakness over and over and over again. So you'll see in my reports and my bug bounty, I'll get on a topic and I will blow it out to like 20 something reports where I find the same type of thing over and over and over again. So my hacking is very like a roller coaster. It could be dry times, but whenever it's good, it's really good. Because
so you're doing research of some sort, though. Like, your way of doing hacking is you find this thing that's really interesting, you make it into your research, becomes your goal. You just find this bug, you go after all the domains, all the subdomains of every company you hack on, and see if you can recognize that pattern over and over until it dries up, and you move on to the next one.
Exactly. And you also talk a lot about word list as well. Having hacked so much on Verizon, my word list is very tuned in to the nomenclature and the lingo that is used by that company. Cool. So, my 200,000 plus word list is going to be extremely targeted on the way that Yahoo operates.
Hey, real quick before you go to Corbin, I just want to reiterate something that he said about saving his data. Even when I know that I'm not going to hack this week, I'm still going to run things like subdomain discovery and stuff against my main targets and Yahoo domains and stuff, and save it to look at. And just like he said, I might not know how to exploit something today, but eventually I'll find out, or a bug will come out at some point, a disclosed bug, targeting a service, and you're like, oh, I know I've seen this before. So then you can go back through that data. And it's really important with a company the size of Verizon, just because they have so many things that are getting brought online, taken offline, and brought back online and stuff on a consistent basis, because they have so many different products that it's worth doing things like your Recon passively, or as passively as you can, consistently, because you never know when that one host is going to suddenly pop on. And if you are watching it good enough and you notice that, hey, this host popped up, it might be a host that you recognize from the naming convention of their servers to be a certain thing, and you know that you can go and target it to make some pretty good money pretty quick before they turn it back off on you.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
historical data is huge, especially on Yahoo.
Cool. Let's talk about h1-702. So, as we talked about earlier, the panel today is mostly around how you became the top 3 most successful hackers at h1-702 this past summer, and we measured this success by the bounty amounts generated. So there was going to be a 4th guest that they couldn't unfortunately make it, but the 3 of you were the top, hackers at that event. Starting with you, Corbin, you're already on the screen. I know you got a very crazy bug. We can't talk about the challenge that you accomplished with another hacker, but talk about it a little bit. Tell me, talk to me about how did you become one of the top paid hackers? How did you prepare yourself? What did you do? Was collaboration involved? Was research involved? How did that work?
Yeah, so there was for 702, that was mainly collaboration. I collaborated basically only with Nafi and then Wakelam. Nafi knows Yahoo's infrastructure so amazing, like it's insane how much he knows. So I just went with him, and Nafi's like his skill set is very well like infrastructure hacking mostly. So I am a little more like I would say I'm more technical than he is in certain aspects. So we basically just paired up and said, hey, let's just try to kick it and see how many bugs we can get to fall out and spit out. And so yeah, he has an insane amount of like historical data and a bunch of like permutations he's made. So I took a lot of that data and started going over like a bunch of different hosts and started monitoring hosts. And eventually for this specific challenge, I wasn't even meaning to go after it because they had the challenge at another event, and I was like, well, there's no way I'm gonna just do that and spend all my time on it. So I was like, I kind of put it to the back of the mind and said, no, I'm just gonna go after this thing instead, just like everything else, and just forget about the challenge. And so I started just kind of monitoring different hosts and trying different things, trying different like virtual hosts, etc. Trying with different permutations of data that I was given with by Nafi, and eventually one host changed one of the few days before the event, and yeah, it helped us solve the challenge. Basically, it popped up. It wasn't supposed to be there. Something must have changed with the way they had their infrastructure set up. But yeah, it was really bad, and yeah, we eventually got that challenge. But yeah, most of it was collaborating. There were a few bugs I had individually, but collaboration was huge at that event.
Very cool. What about you, John? How did it work out with you? You were also one of the top paid hackers. What was the mentality like going in, and how did you accomplish such a high level of payouts? And if you are talking, you may be on mute.
Maybe you can hear me now. So the answer is absolute 100% focus. I was doing bug bounty full time, and going into our h1-702, I probably had about 10 months or so of data that I collected. I was coming in, had mentioned earlier, kind of these rolling. You find an issue that can be found on multiple servers. I had, I think, 2 or 3 of those, and the 2 of them were pretty big. So I can't remember the total number of reports that I had in. I think it was in the neighborhood of 60, which was a big number. But if you take a look at it, I really had maybe 3 or 4 bugs that were on 10 to 15 different locations, different hosts, but it was kind of same. So definitely maximized my points and my reports and rewards and bounties from that. But that was just a kind of a crescendo of what I had been working on literally for 10 months.
Did you collaborate with anybody, or was it just you just going in there? So was this your first event, by the way, you got invited to?
That was my first event. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden there's like this new guy who's just kicking it and like taking over the leaderboard. Like, who is it? Who is Mayo? Like, everyone was like, "What is happening?" Like, there's this new guy just absolutely murdering it. It was crazy.
No, it. When I say I don't collaborate, I pull information, which is basically I consume so much on the web and reading and learning. So it's a one-way collaboration where I'm absorbing as much as I can out of the community, and just learning and trying to apply those types of things.
Very cool. Tommy, what about you, my friend? You also, I think you said you had $100,000 payout that day, if I remember correctly.
Not individual payout, but I was just actually pulling it up, and for August of last year, I made 166,600. So I think most of that, I think at least 130 or so of that came from 702. And I was actually looking through HackerOne, my bug reports, also trying to remember what it was that I reported for the event, because I get confused at times. But basically what I did, how I approached it was, we had 3 different targets, and one of them was my favorite target, Verizon. So rather than spread my time out really looking at the other targets, I spent a little bit of time looking at them, but not much. And I focused solely on Verizon just because, well, it's who I'm comfortable hacking and who I have the most knowledge about. And for that specific event, I ended up finding I've been targeting the YQL servers for a little over a year now, and I happened to find one of the YQL servers and was able to do several SSRFs on different endpoints and stuff like that.
Okay.
A few privilege escalations, some IDORs and things like that. Basically, I found a way to interact with an admin API that I shouldn't have been able to interact with at all, and I was able to do it completely unauthenticated.
Wow.
I was able to do things like spoof posts and stuff like that by any user, including Yahoo admins and stuff. So I kind of thoroughly tore that whole little API apart.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun, though.
This wasn't your first event, but how does this, I know that it's been a while for at least you to go to a live hacking event as your first time, but back in, what was it, 2016?
2016, h1-702 of 2016.
How did it feel getting invited? And to this day, when they did happen, at least, how did it feel getting invited to go around the world to hack some of these targets and get paid for it?
It's amazing. It's a lot of people ask me about what I do for work and everything like that, and I tell them I don't really work. I'm a firm believer in the whole saying that if you love your job, you never go to work a day in your life. And hacking is, building on what John said earlier, like the rush of endorphins and stuff like that. When you find a bug, hacking is an addiction, and it's something that with all of the resources we have now, like HackerOne, allowing us to do this in a safe, legal. Hold on,
Your dog is. We'll be right back with Dawgyg. Puppy's not happy, apparently. There we go.
no, a dog just walked by, so all 3 of them saw him and started barking at it. But what was I saying?
About getting invited to the go to hack companies.
Oh yeah, with the resources that we have now, like HackerOne, allowing us to do this in a safe way to basically keep exploring our curiosities and stuff like that, and to get paid for it, and flown around the world to places that realistically you never would have gotten to go to, like on my own without bug bounties and stuff, is just completely life changing. And I describe it to people as I feel just like a professional athlete, like the top paid football players or baseball or basketball players. They're getting paid crazy amounts of money to do something that they love, and it's just like that's how it feels to me. It's like I can't think of another job that I would rather have than doing bug bounties and hacking. It's it's like a dream. It's literally a dream come true, being able to turn what has always been my hobby. Like when I get bored, I used to go and sit there and hack. And now that I'm getting paid for it and not put in prison is just absolutely amazing.
Get paid and also get to travel for it, right?
Yes, the traveling for it is so cool because we have those little event days where they'll take us on the tours of that city and stuff like that and do sightseeing, and it's really cool being able to
Yeah.
see these cities from like more than just like our hotel and everything like that.
What about you, Corbin? Since you came in halfway through, because I know John was just recent. We'll get back to him later, towards the end. But you came through halfway where the events were already kind of established. How did it feel getting invited as a hacker and, again, getting to travel and participate in these events and be a part of it with other hackers that are involved?
Yeah, so I think actually my first event was like, actually I wasn't a hacker for the first. I think the first event I went to was H1. I think was it the 2018 702.
Yep.
I was triaging. I was actually triaging back then, and it was my actually last time triaging. Was my last day was the last day of 702. But it was definitely incredible to see all the hackers there because I'd never actually experienced one. So it was more on the triage side, but it was definitely like, wow, this is really cool and something I want to participate in myself. And it kind of gave that like goal to, okay, I'm just going to keep grinding and hopefully get invited to one of these. And I remember getting invited to, I think my first event that I actually got invited to was New York. Maybe it was 212. It was a Teams event. And I was at, I think that was it.
That was it, yeah. It was a team event at the last 212 HackerOne did, not this December, the December before.
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, I got an invite to an event. This is crazy. I was absolutely ecstatic about it and wasn't expecting it really at all. And yeah, it's been, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's really crazy how, like, I don't know. It's just crazy.
It feels surreal, right? It's like unreal to be able to do these things.
I can't like put that into words. Is like I think I was an 18-year-old, 19-year-old getting invited to go hack a company and get paid for travel, or like they pay for travel, hotels, food, like everything's provided for. All I have to worry about is just hacking something. And like
you get paid to do it.
And I get paid for whatever I found, like crazily paid. And it's just like unbelievable. Something that was just a hobby for me and still is a hobby for me. Like doesn't feel like work, like Tommy was saying. It's just really, it feels almost like a dream still. Like it's unrealistic. Like every event that I've been invited to, like thus far, is still like, wow, like this is still happening. Like I almost feel like I don't deserve it. And it's just like, wow, like I'm just so blessed to be able to like go to these events, and not only just work at them, but also just hang out with people, see the city and explore and like travel.
Right.
It's really insane. And also to hack really cool targets and find some really cool vulnerabilities with other people and hear about what other people found too is really, I don't know, amazing is like the only word I can really use, I guess, to describe all these events.
It makes sense though. I definitely understand. I don't get to hack like you guys do. But the fact that, hacking is the reason why I'm put in this place to be able to travel and, pay for everything that I have. Like everything in here is paid for by hacking. I definitely relate to that. Let's move on to John really quick. We'll come back to the life-changing stuff in a sec. John, I want to hear from you a little bit. You were just invited to your first life hacking event at h1-702, and you are currently number one for this event. Coming to that event, we will talk about you being number one in this event in a sec, but how did it feel to be invited to your first live hacking event just recently in Vegas? How did it feel getting that email and, being invited and, all the way to go in there in person? And you're on mute again if you're talking.
Sorry, guys. Thank you very much. No, I really had no idea what to expect. There was a bit of nerves. Obviously, you're entering into an arena where the best of the best are going to be. And so I just wanted not to fail, right? I just wanted to make sure that I at least made a good representation for myself. And I put in crazy hours, and that's how I make up for my weakness, is the amount of time that I put into those events. But the experience was incredible. Once I got in and I started talking to the individuals that were there, obviously the level of intellect is supreme. But just look at this panel. Look at the diversity that you see from our backgrounds of what we've done in our past, where we are at our in our stage of life. Completely different. But the one thing that we do have in common is, and it's really in our DNA, and it's that quest to figure stuff out. Call it the knack, right? We all got a case of the knack, right? And that's what drives us. And so it's great to, in these live hacking events, to kind of sit down and be able to meet with people that have the same commonality, be able to talk to, immediately begin to relate. And there's a genuine desire, not only for everybody to help each other, and very fortunate to have that opportunity to experience that for sure.
Like he just said about people really wanting to help each other. When you look at the fact that us in bug bounties, this is what a lot of us do for our livelihood, and there's not many different like careers that you can have where you're willing to openly share information with people that can be seen as your competitors, because we're all fighting over the same like bugs with the same companies and stuff, and the willingness of people to still share tips, tricks, blog posts and stuff like that to educate others is one of the really great things about this community, because most other communities would keep those things like tight to the chest so that they can be the ones out there making that money. But we're all willing to help each other out and like all keep learning from each other. And it's just, that's one of the best parts about this community in general.
Very cool. Now let's talk about this event. This event is a little bit different, right? We don't have the in-person aspect of it where, you get to just walk out and go talk to, example, you want to go and talk to Corbin, for example, Tommy, you don't have that opportunity anymore because it's not as easy to go walk up and talk to them, right? Since you're on the screen right now, how does this event comparing to, just the experience of the event itself, how does it compare to an in-person event, and how are you doing so far? Like, are you enjoying it? How's it going?
It's going pretty well. For me personally, I haven't been as successful as I was hoping to be for this event. There's just been some hurdles that are a little more than I guess I'm really used to when it comes to our current targets for this. But in general, I really like the idea. I do miss being somewhere with everybody to hang out, because these events and like DEF CON and stuff are the only times each year that I really get to be in a group of people that have similar interest and thoughts and stuff like that I do that I can really relate to, like John said earlier. And it's like, it's really nice to be with them in person and be able to talk about things with people that actually understand what you're talking about. Like when we get excited for finding a cool bug, it's like you tell people around like that you interact with on a normal day basis and they just don't understand it. And like until you tell them, oh well, it's a $20,000 bug. Oh well, that's really cool. But it's like I can sit here and tell you guys about some stupid little bug that just for some reason it works and everything, and it just makes it a really cool bug, and it's just like everybody understands it and can appreciate it and everything more than just what the dollar amount is in the end result. But the virtual thing is really cool still, because our target, are we allowed to talk about our target for it?
We can talk about the Verizon
No,
meeting
no
that
bugs or
but
nothing.
no, we
But
can't
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about we can't talk about the scope though. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So
it's an unreleased scope because Chris. Let me give you a background real quick. Chris just came on here. He's only talked about that it's a very limited. It's a new scope that's been in the bug bounty program for a while, but you need some special access to get it. But we can't say what that is.
Okay. I wasn't trying to go that deep into it. It was just so Verizon has had some office hours and stuff like that
Yeah.
each day of the event where we could join a Google Hangout and talk with somebody from their team if we had questions and stuff like that to get kind of like almost that little feel of being able to go and find them at the hotel or whatever and ask them questions
Mhm.
at a normal live event. And they're also been doing broadcast of Q&As and stuff with
Right.
people from different parts of their team, and getting to hear from those guys is really, really cool because normally at the live events we don't really get all of that information about or get to be introduced to different members of the team and hear about this type of stuff that they do that's tied in or a result of the bug bounty program and stuff. So being able to hear things like that is really cool. That is easier to do when it's a virtual conference or event like this one. So they both really have their pros, and there's not really a lot of cons for either one. So like, or negative things. So they're both really good still, in my opinion.
Very
I
cool.
would definitely participate in more. I don't want to see these completely replace the like monthly event, like real live event. But in times like this is definitely a viable alternative that is absolutely better than having nothing.
Very cool. What about you, Corbin? How you enjoying the event so far? I know we talked about
Um,
this a little bit earlier in the other stream that you joined, but for those people that didn't get to catch you on the other stream, how's it
yeah.
going so far? How you liking it?
So yeah, this event's been going really well for me so far. I've enjoyed it a lot. One thing that I really appreciate about this event is that so again, like I said, I'm in school. We just recently switched to online school because of the
Right.
pandemic going on. And so the event started, then I actually had to drive all the way back to school, like 9 hours to move out and then come back. So it's been nice that it's virtual because I don't know that I would have, there's just, it's harder to manage school in an event, like when they're both going on. Now that they're both virtual, it's a lot easier for me to be flexible and be able to devote this amount of time and then like do schoolwork and then devote this amount of time and still be able to like do that without being constricted to, okay, you have like a live event, here's 3 days, you have this much time to hack, go. It's a lot easier for me to manage during the school year, at least like Tommy said earlier, though. Like I do love normal live events, like, absolutely, like the August events, super fun times, super great to be with everyone too. But I really am enjoying the flexibility currently with a virtual event. I feel like I've just been able to even go after a target, take a break from it, come back to it a day or 2 days later, and have a new mindset and find a bug on something that I looked at previously just because I took a mental break, took some time to actually think about what's happening. So
Right.
I think it's been really useful and helped me perform better as a hacker, I think, too, just because I have time to kind of just breathe and actually figure out what's going on, like with my head and just think.
Very cool. What about you, John? And remember, you might be on mute as you speak.
Thank you. I would have started talking.
It's okay.
Sorry. No, I think it's fantastic, and I think it's been a success. Everything about it I've enjoyed so far. I'm hoping it actually provides a platform or kind of a framework going forward, where in between some of the larger live hacking events, there can be maybe a mini 1 week long virtual, and who knows how that would play out. But it provides flexibility and provides opportunity for additional tournaments, get more people involved. Yeah, I mean, you could actually have like a play-in tournament where you had a couple of virtuals to get to the main event. There's different ways that it can be applied, which is kind of fun to think about. But as far as being access to people and being able to communicate, it won't replace the live hacking event, but it truly has been a pleasure the past 2 weeks to work on.
Very cool. Tommy, you mentioned you had some issues. So with this event, you didn't get to be as successful as you wanted to be. Feel free to chime in with this next question. But I noticed with the leaderboard currently, we have two of you on the stream are in the top 3 of the leaderboard, both Mayo and Corbin. how did you guys prepare for this event? We'll start with you, John, since you're already on the screen. But how did you prepare for this event? What was your attitude and mentality like when you first got started?
Yeah, so my mentality. I'm trying to guard words here. So I started recon early, and I was reconning probably 4 or 5 targets or companies that I thought could have possibly be within the event. And what I did was built up as many subdomains as I could, use whatever recon methods to just build up some data sets. And then also kind of went through a game plan. All right. And what do each one of these targets have, and where would their most likely vulnerabilities be? And then I did a rank order. And so I had a 2-3 weeks of prep up before even the scope was announced of what was going to be in it. And I'm like, okay, I'm using this game plan and I'm going after it. This. So before even knowing what we were going to be hacking on, I was like, okay, that's game plan C. I'm going to take this off and I'm going to go with it. And whenever we started the event, I knew exactly what I was going after ahead of time, and it benefits paid off. Can we say ceasefire?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's the ceasefire that they give you guys.
Yeah, so I think within 5 hours or so from the launch of the event, I got that ceasefire, and I hold that because of the prep work that I did mentally or just kind of on paper of what I wanted to go after. So happened to be that was a vulnerability, and I was just hammering as much as I could into it.
Very cool. What about you, Corbin? What was it like for you to prepare yourself for this event? What was your attitude and mentality like going in?
Yeah, so honestly, I didn't really prepare a lot mentally before the scope call. I was more worried about, okay, what's going to happen with school and like this pandemic going on. I was more concerned about the logistics of everything working out. But once we were on the scope call and we were given access to that thing, I was like, okay, I am just going to spend as much time as I possibly can looking at everything. And so I started off a little bit with that stuff we were given special access to, but then I started talking to Brett or Zayat, and then we were like, let's just start hacking this thing instead. So I had maybe 1-2 bugs on the thing that literally everyone else was looking at, and Brett and I have been looking at something completely different that's very core, and it's been paying off very well. So I would say that I didn't really have the mentality of like, I'm going to prepare to recon. It was like right as we heard the scope, I'm going to start my recon, obviously. And then it's just, I didn't really have any expectations. I try not to have expectations going into the event. I just say, you know what, I'm just going to sit down, spend as much time as I can, and just try to do as much as I can possibly. Obviously, just want to be hardworking, but yeah, I didn't really have any real mental preparations besides the fact of, okay, I'm just going to try my best, work my ass off, etc. But yeah.
Very cool. Tommy, what about you? I know you had some issues. It didn't play as you wanted it to, but before any of that happened, before when you heard about the event happening, what was it like? What was the mentality? How were you gonna prepare for yourself to be successful?
I don't really do much different to prepare myself, just because I'm always used to hacking them. Um, what the scope ended up being was not something that I was expecting, just because, as you mentioned before, it required special access and stuff, and it's access that I had been trying to get for several years. So it was kind of like a complete surprise. So I actually came into the event thinking that it was going to be extremely a good event for me, because I was pretty confident to be able to hopefully find some good bugs in this area. And it didn't really pan out that way. And I spent quite a bit of time trying to target the YQL servers um, under our targets, because just a few months, probably 5 or 6 months ago, I got one of our targets. I had some really good bugs um, on it a few months back because of the YQL server and stuff. So I was hoping to be able to basically do that again when I could find the correct YQL server and start like just doing what I do with it. But yeah, it didn't really turn out that way. I think I've only got like 4 bugs as it stands right now. I was just looking at the leaderboard, and we've got 20 hours left. So I do plan on spending the next, once we get done on this, I don't really plan to do anything between now and when hacking ends tomorrow, just because I'm not happy with my own personal performance in this
Okay.
for this event. And like Corbin said earlier, sometimes you get invited to these live events and you don't feel like you should be there. And my performance right now really hits me with the whole imposter syndrome thing. Um, just because this is supposed to be my target and I'm in 11th place right now. And it's like, I don't want to say embarrassing, but it's just like, it's frustrating to me personally that I'm not doing as well as I had hoped.
But you lose some and win some, right? Like it's a part of the
Oh,
game.
absolutely, absolutely. But it's imposter syndrome is like really big in this industry, and it's like people will sit there and act shocked when I tell them that I absolutely have imposter syndrome, like all the time. Just because you make this much, it doesn't mean there's times where I can't find anything for weeks or even a month or two, and it's like that's extremely frustrating. It starts making you doubt yourself, like
Yeah.
should I really be relying on this for my sole source of income for me and my daughter? So it's like it's definitely got its ups and downs.
Yeah.
But in the long run, so far, personally, it has paid off like in the long run. So I just have to remember that just because it's not going too well now doesn't mean that 2 weeks from now I might not find like another $100,000 worth of bugs through a day.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a
Well,
part of the
yeah,
game.
and like realistically, like we all struggle. I know I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot too, but like even at 415 like a month ago, I was like so out of it and like didn't I had like 2 crappy bugs, made like nothing. But like yeah, it's you win some, you lose some, so it's something to get used to, and that we all struggle with definitely.
You
Especially John.
definitely can't you definitely can't take it to heart when you lose some, just because if you come into bug bounties expecting to basically for it all to be ups and like you always to be consistent, it's not going to happen, and you're setting yourself up for failure
Oh yeah,
right off top. You can't
absolutely.
have expectations like that. You have to understand that for the vast majority of bug hunters, you have a lot more downs than you have ups. And the good hunters are the ones that recognize that and still keep at it instead of getting frustrated and quitting.
Yeah, I think one of the like biggest things I've learned so far is just learning to like, keep my head down and just sticking through it like when it sucks, because there's a lot of times it sucks, and it's really easy to get burnt out too over time, and obviously that goes more into like mental health and just like taking time to just do other things and kind of relax and kind of re-energize. But a really big part of it as well is just sticking with it, because a lot of times you can be on the very edge of a bug without you even realizing it, and for you to just stick with it and stick with it, or even just put it in the background, put it in your notes and coming back to it later is really important. And there's a lot of times like I knew when I think it took me almost, I think it was probably a good year or year and a half to get my first bounty when I was first starting bug bounties. Like I had done VDPs, but then I started trying, okay, I think I'm ready to do actual paid programs. It took me a year and a half to find my first bounty, get my first bounty, which was $100 for a subdomain takeover. And this was like very discouraging to me. I was like, I don't think this is me. I don't think I'm skilled enough. But you just really, really have to stick with it and have that grit and determination just to keep sticking with it, even if you're coming up dry a lot.
John, I know you and I talked about imposter syndrome, and you were kind of like, I want to hear about this. How do you feel about imposter syndrome?
I don't think anybody's imposters. We all have our own approach to targets, and sometimes it aligns perfectly, and other times it doesn't fit, right? Or we can easily go down a rabbit hole, and our guts telling us there's going to be a bug here, there's going to be a bug here, but we look up and a day and a half or 2 days gone by and you haven't found anything. And then bug bounties, it's weird, but there's so many streaks that come into it. There's times where you can't help but to find a bug. And yesterday afternoon, I started down one of those streaks where I found 2 bugs from error messages, and I was doing things wrong, right? So it was doing things wrong, but I was getting information out that actually caused that actually gets some reports in. So yeah, I don't think that anybody should be worried about imposter syndrome. We're all here because of the aggregate of what we've been able to put together. And don't doubt yourself. And to the word that I use is tenacity. Just keep at it.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway for me, at least, is that it's as cheesy and cliche as it sounds, consistency is key. That's what the 3 of you have pretty much told me, especially with Corbin saying, I got my first bounty, and I was just like, this is not good enough for me. But here you are, a few years later, being one of the top paid hackers from h1-702. I actually have the leaderboard from h1-702 up on the stream right now. I had an image of it. It's not the final number we had for the event, but looking at it, it just also shows that 2 of you were the top paid hackers, and the numbers, the reputation doesn't match up with the bounty amounts, but you 2 were actually in the top. So
That's also the whole event.
Yeah, that's a whole event. Yeah, that's right. This is a whole event from h1-702, and I'm actually gonna put the h1-415 image that I have up right now for people to see the difference.
Do you happen to have the leaderboard from just Verizon's day of 702?
No, the thing that I've been doing is I just take a screenshot of the end of the event recap, say thank you hackers, whatever. This is
that ended up being a little bit different too.
Yeah, I'm literally going through all my media right now looking for the bounty amounts that I have posted, just so I can show people what it was like. But looking at h1-415, I see Mayo at h1-702, h1-415, and the current one now, all top 3. I see in the top 3. Dawgyg, you were number 1 for h1-415, and Corbin, you are currently in the top 3 for this event, and rooting for you that it would stay that way at least until the end of the event. Yeah,
they gotta keep paying bounties out.
I think I was dead last in LA.
And Anshuman, who's number 2, is actually in the chat right now, talking to everybody. That's all I had for today. Unless you guys want to add anything to the end of this. If you have any advice, anything you want to add, this would be the time. Starting with you, Tommy, since you're already on the screen.
As far as advice, if you want to get into bug bounties, just do it. Don't just look around for somebody to hold your hand. The best way to get into bug bounties is to start reading blog posts, start reading disclosed reports on HackerOne, and then just going and trying to hack. Hands-on experience is the best teacher when it comes to this, and there's nothing else that it's going to help you more. So yeah, and just keep trying. Remember that duplicates are still valid bugs, and it means you found something valid. So don't get upset over duplicates. Look at them as you're on the right path.
Absolutely. What about you, John?
The biggest thing that's helped me out is the ability to ask good questions. And what I mean by that, if you ask the right question, the answer will present itself to you. That comes with experience. And once you begin to be able to ask the right questions and be able to kind of dive into like, well, why specifically is this occurring? Then you can do the research. You then find like, okay, this is what I'm looking for, and then be able to apply to it. So that's my words of advice. Work on your ability to build up your the types of questions that you're asking, and not only your research, but whenever you talk to other hackers, so you can maximize your time there. And then, like I said, the word tenacity, that's key too.
Last but not least, Corbin, you're also the youngest out of everybody in this group. What kind of
Yeah,
advice do you have?
not even 21 yet. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things is actually I saw a tweet from Yobert, who's gone, on Twitter. I think it was earlier today, but he said, "Remember that bug bounty hunting is a marathon and not a sprint," which I think is just great advice in general about just our industry, or essentially anything you want to learn. Is that you're gonna have to put in a lot of time and a lot of work to get good at what you do. Like all of us, for instance, like Tommy, I don't even know how old you are, but you've been hacking since like forever, and like you have all that experience.
I'm
How long,
going to be 37 this year.
how long
I
have you
was
been?
hacking before you were born. I've
Yes.
been hacking for about 22 years, 23 years, I think.
Yeah. So like exactly, is like good things come with time and effort and work, right? I didn't get good at hacking in a span of a month or whatever, but I put in work and I put in time, and eventually you see results coming back. I think it's really easy to get discouraged by like, oh, I'm gonna spend a month on this and just try to get good. Like, yes, there are people who will be exceptional and start understanding and getting into it really quickly. There's also people who like just you put in the work, and no matter what kind of person you are, um, whether you catch on to things quickly or not, is that over time, like you put in time, you put in work, results will come back, and you have to not give in to the negativity or the discouragement that's going on in your mind. You just have to figure out how to deal with that, and also just stick with it. Just remember that learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Very cool. I just realized I put both yours. I put the tweet that you were talking on the stream. It showed it for a few seconds. I put you on the stream, and I just put Dawgyg's Twitter. John, are you on Twitter at all?
I'm not a social media guy. I'm one of the few. I do have a Twitter account, but I've never posted or never tweeted. I don't have a Facebook account.
John, are you on MySpace?
I didn't even join MySpace, but I do remember whenever it was used for its original intent, which was to promote your band. I was a college radio DJ back then, back when terrestrial radio was actually a thing.
I love it.
But no, I'm not a social media guy.
Very cool. Well, hey, I want to say thank you, all three of you, for joining me on this Sunday afternoon, taking your personal time to come up here and drop some knowledge, help me out with the stream. Big thank you to three of you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing the final results with this live hacking event.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. It was definitely fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk soon, and good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Later.
See you guys. All right, that was it. The panel with the top hackers from h1-702, the top paid hackers from the event at least. But that's it for today's stream. That's all I had. A big thank you to all of you who joined me today. I appreciate you guys sticking through this and letting our speakers tell us how to become better at our hacking. That's it for me. Tomorrow I'll be back 9 a.m. Gotta hop off and just be lazy for a little bit and get some rest before the stream tomorrow with the HackerOne community team, I believe. If you're not a part of my Discord, feel free to drop in and join. There is that. If you want to follow me on social media, everything is on there. If you didn't catch this whole thing, I put YouTube in there as well. It will be on youtube.com/nahamsek. Again, thank you all the new followers, all the new subscribers. Thank you to Bidcode for the gift to Dawgyg. Looking down at this list, there's a few new subscribers that I want to shout out really quickly. Failed Nuke for the cheer, Bug Disclose Guy for the cheers. I think I call that Full Hooks, and Blick Blam, everybody else already. That's it for me for today. I appreciate you all being here. I'll be back again tomorrow. But until then, have a good night, have a good day, and wash your hands. Peace.